puts her foot on its head, and with a kitchen knife cuts its head off. Yeah, no problem.
Bulgaria, baby, Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, baby. When I was born, my family would have to queue. A person would have to remain in the queue at all times for basics like bread, milk, this kind of stuff. I drank a Red Bull and had a big spliff on the way to college for the exam.
Red Bull and weed. I mean, that's every college kid's backpack, right?
Was I even fertile after all the partying and terrible food? And
you thought you'd killed all your sperm? That's
Bro,
impressive 10 years of partying right there.
The young have become the old in many cases.
When you go to people and say, hey, look, I can solve your insomnia by giving your kid a spoonful of honey, what's the reaction?
How do I know he's just not another snake oil salesman?
Yeah.
And she told her, just talk to him.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan and Dante. Welcome to another episode of Middle-Aged Mess, the show for people who knew exactly where they were when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. So today we're talking about living longer. We're talking about living better. We're talking about your well-being. We're talking to Christian Yordanov.
Hey, Dan.
Nice to have you on. I appreciate your time. You are in a foreign country right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I live in the south of Portugal.
Oh, that's not what city?
It's close to Portimao, so it's about, I guess, 30-40 miles from the airport.
Okay. Are you anywhere near that city that has the 100-foot waves?
Oh man, I've seen those waves. Holy mother of Christ.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, people are insane.
Something
people
else.
Are absolutely out of their minds. God bless them.
Well, like I get my chiropractor showed me the waves in his office. I was getting an adrenaline rush just watching it.
Just watching your heart started racing.
Yeah.
I got it. And where are you from originally?
Bulgaria.
Okay. How'd you get from Bulgaria to Portugal? That's a big trip.
It's with my family. We've lived in South Africa when I was a kid, and
where in South Africa?
Johannesburg.
Oh, that's hardcore South Africa.
That's hardcore, yeah. But we were kind of in the suburbs, in the vicinity. So we went there. I was in primary school first, and I couldn't speak a word of English, literally.
Oh wow! I was going to ask you if you speak Afrikaners.
I could at the time a little bit because we had to take it in school. So I somehow passed those grades. We also did a bit of Zulu in high school. I did about a couple of years of high school there before we went back to Bulgaria. I could say all those things. Is I.
I'm not even sure.
Like all that stuff.
Oh my God.
Monday. By the way, that's the thing, when we went back to Bulgaria, all my classmates, I guess I was like 15, 16 at the time, all my classmates, so like in your school, was there like, you look out the window, was there monkeys? Could you like pick bananas? It's like, dude, like Bulgarians, bro. We were in South Africa, was like decades more advanced than Eastern Europe.
Well, I hate to tell you this.
Back in the 90s.
I hate to tell you this. My next question was going to be, when you went to school, did you see monkeys out your window? So,
yeah, that's what people think, right? But Johannesburg has, I don't know, 10 million people or something like that. The city itself.
No, it's huge. I've been there. Massive.
It's a city, right? Yeah. Now, Eastern Europeans in general, I love them, of course. They were very ignorant during the communist times. They were very ignorant to the outside world because nobody in their right mind would. Why would you want to go to Eastern Europe in communist times?
Well, I think your media was also but your media also was restricted. Like you didn't get to see any images of the outside world. All you saw was that Bulgaria was the greatest country on earth, and you didn't need to know anything else, right?
Exactly. And my grandparents, the only trip they ever took was to, I think it was in 1983 to East Germany. That was like the only time they were out of the freaking country until the fall of communism, until my parents started traveling around and taking them. My granny, before she died, she'd been in more countries than probably 99.9% of her peers in Bulgaria. So
once you guys got set free after, communism fell, I would imagine, it's like hundreds, thousands of years of pent up, desires to go and check out the world.
But, Bulgaria has been really crushed. So we were under 5 centuries of basically enslavement. First, the Ottoman Empire, later sort of the Turkish Empire. And it was only I think it was the late 1800s or the early 900s, somewhere maybe 15 years before the First World War. We were quote unquote liberated by Russia. And then, of course, Russia took over.
Right.
And then it was the communists, which basically they're saying Bulgaria was basically a satellite state of the USSR. We were never part of the USSR, but
You might as
for
well
all
have been.
intents and purposes,
Yeah.
might as well have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard when you were. It's like the Irish, they were under sort of British rule for some eight centuries, I think it was. So
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard. It crushes the spirit of the nation, and that causes people to become more thrifty and sneaky and trying to, it changes the culture of the people. Whereas, like, look at the Americans. So America's been prospering. Like, Americans think big, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially like in the East and the West, they think big. Whereas in the Eastern European countries, a lot of the mentality is, what can I scrounge? Like, what can I get on some social welfare program and scrounge a bit off the government, off of other.
Well, I
So
got to
it's
tell you,
weird.
that's one of the things I love about doing this podcast is I get to talk to people from a lot of different cultures and different places all over the world, even all over America. I mean, there's different sections of America where things are very different than they are, for instance, like in Las Vegas where I am, or Los Angeles where I grew up, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, in America, it's bred into our DNA. It's bred into our DNA to like try and create and make it big and go after whatever you want. I mean, that's what the whole
Yeah,
country is based on. And then
yeah,
for a culture like yours to grow up in a place where you just wanted another sack of rice from, the Russian overlord. I mean, it's hard to
yeah.
think big when, a big night out is some extra yeast, I would imagine.
Exactly. When I was born, my family would have to queue. A person would have to remain in the queue at all times for basics like bread, milk, this kind of stuff, bro.
Yeah,
Sugar.
it's crazy.
They, so we've come a long way. Bulgaria, it's kind of developing a bit better now, but it's still the poorest country in the EU.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll tell you what, my grandfather, who grew up in Israel, well, first in Ukraine, and then he went to Israel. He came out here in I'm gonna say in like the early 70s, and we took him into a supermarket and he cried.
wow.
Like he just cried. I mean, he's looking at all this food and like bread and ice cream and Coke and
Yeah,
and Pop-Tarts, and he just didn't even know what to do with himself. It's just such a different concept.
absolutely, bro. Like, we're so, like, in the West, we're so spoiled. It's not even funny, man. We're so spoiled.
Yeah, and most of us don't understand. I understand. I understand. Of course, I understand, but I don't know how many other people do. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think we all kind of know. Anyway, so you went from South Africa to where?
So I was in Bulgaria for a while. Then I turned 18, finished high school a year early, luckily,
Nice.
and then went to Dublin, Ireland,
Oh, really?
for college. Yeah.
My daughter just happens to be studying in Dublin right now. She's taking a semester abroad in Dublin.
Wow, nice. Yeah.
Why did you go there?
It's, where else could you go? Back in the early 2000s, it was hard. You still had to get visas, and
Mm.
the Ireland was basically the easiest place to get in. You just paid money, and you got the visas and paid the college, and they helped out. And
Where'd you go to
so
school? Did you go to Trinity or UCD?
no, I was it's Griffith College. It's a more private college.
Okay.
But I dropped out. I dropped out the second year, man.
Why? Why'd you drop out?
I dropped out of college like 3 times before I actually got it all together and finished it.
Shit, the Zulus knew you were lazy early on. I guess they figured it
Bro,
out.
they had the sixth sense. I'm telling you. No, dude, because like I was studying computers, and computers just boring as hell.
Right.
Programming and mathematics, and I was never into that stuff. I mean, I would have done well if I had applied myself, because I actually, in the first year, I did no study. I passed with everything flying, but then it always gets hard the second year. So
Right.
the first year, there's a programming language called Java,
Mm-hmm.
which is based on C++ or whatever, and I got the highest ever grade for that, and that was 97% of the Java exam. But listen to this: that was after a night out, and in the morning, I drank a Red Bull and had a big spliff on the way to college for the exam.
Red Bull and weed. I mean, that's every college kid's backpack, right? That's amazing.
Exactly, exactly.
But you got tired
Yeah,
of it. Wasn't your gig.
wasn't my jam, bro. I
Yeah.
felt forced. I felt forced, and at the time I was into electronic music, techno,
Okay. I can tell by your
which
glasses.
no, this is to protect me from the blue light,
Okay.
because I have the studio lights here,
Okay.
so
Got it.
I'm kind of I I came a long way in my 20s. I feel like I squandered them. My health, I was going gray by the age of 25 already. Lots of gray hair on the sides
I'm right.
here.
I'm right behind you, baby. I'm right behind
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Well, how old are you, bro?
56 years old, Christian.
6 years
I am an
old.
old man and definitely on the decline.
You
The
know, I heard
big
there's a good
slide.
book. There's a good book on increasing your longevity.
I've heard about that. I've heard about
It's
it.
called How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1
Okay.
of possibly many. I heard the author knows what he's talking
I
about.
was going to get into that in volume 2 of this podcast, but eventually we were going to get you all the way to Portugal. I'm just trying to set up the
Yeah,
timeline. Okay, so you dropped out of college and then you went
yeah.
to where? What'd you do then?
Oh man, it's a mess. Then my 20s, I worked so many jobs in bars and call centers, and uh, I worked for a online poker company.
Oh, right on.
The night shift. I worked 2 years of the night shift. It really just a lot of health destroying things. I worked in a telecoms company. I think something like 9 months or so, and that we were testing set-top boxes. The kind of the newest. That's what set-top boxes started coming out,
Yeah.
and we were maybe had some 50 or so, maybe even more set-top boxes, all with the Wi-Fi on in a tiny little room with fluorescent lights, and we are basically cooking our brains. We're getting cooked alive by all of these freaking
I mean, you
Wi-Fi
were like a
signals.
true East European. You were just doing shitty jobs and being enslaved all over Europe.
Exactly. Like I was just trying to get by any way I could. And my sister, me, in the meantime, she finished her degree. In her last year, her first sort of paid internship was with Microsoft.
Oh,
Then she worked in some companies, and now, dude, now she's like a hotshot manager in a big tech company,
so you
and
got jealous and you figured you had to do something before your parents kicked you out
yeah,
of the
but
house,
but
right?
she hasn't written two books though. So I've this is it's never been a competition because she was always a real hard worker. I remember actually we had well what one project, it was you have to build a program of some description, and the teacher, the lecturer was really cool, but as always, it was always the case. I would leave things literally to the last night, and she let me copy her project. And this guy pulled us into his office after class one day. He said, "Look, guys, you think I'm some moron from the street here? Like it's clear this jabroni copied your project. Like what the hell? What the hell are you doing?" And my sister's like, "I knew you'd screw me over, you piece of crap," So
I mean, you should have just
I
had
was
a
like, "I'm
Red Bull and a
sorry.
spliff and you would have been fine. I mean,
I'm
come on, man.
sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Follow the
I
pattern.
should have pulled some crazier Eastern European
Yeah.
malarkey, like threats. Threatening him, kneecapping
Well, you're
him.
from Bulgaria, so he figured you were strapped with at least 3 guns at any one time. Okay, so
Yes.
you had a typical 20s lifestyle, meaning you're doing whatever, you're wandering around, getting shitty jobs, trying to survive. Your sister's like the female Bill Gates. How did you start transitioning into the world you live in now?
Well, it all started with so I turned 30 and
Oh,
I
it's a
met
big one.
the woman that will be my wife, and I started thinking more about marriage, kids, and stuff like that, and I don't even know how to put it. I was kind of scared. Basically, was I even fertile after all the partying and terrible food? And
You thought you'd killed all your sperm? That's an
bro, I
impressive
thought,
10 years of partying right
dude,
there.
I told you we spent I think it was 9 months with 60 at least Wi-Fi. Listen, interesting thing. That place where I was working, the telecoms company, a bunch of those guys that I was working with, they were kind of in another room, the big room where kind of all the magic happens. A bunch of those guys fell with cancer, bro.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Ain't no joke.
I mean, we laugh
I,
about those things. The people with the tin hats is they are worried about radioactive
at
waves, and
least,
it's real. It's real out there.
so I knew maybe only some 15 or so of them. I was in a new department testing the set-top boxes, contract, get in, get out, sort it out. So I didn't know everybody. But on that floor, the 15 people I knew, at least five come to mind that had cancer. And they were testing newer technologies as well. So you know how it goes. Newer
Yeah.
technology, stronger signals and so on. So yeah, there was definitely I did some damage to myself there for
Yeah.
sure. But the biggest one of the biggest things was also my grandmother. Seeing her last several years before she died was just torture.
Mm,
So she had multiple strokes. She was at one point it was very difficult for her to even communicate. She just deteriorated. I saw it was torture,
yeah.
right? And it all kind of really. So my granddad's sedentary life caused him to degenerate really quickly. She could take care of him, but that took a big toll on her. Then when he died, the sadness and grief pushed her over the edge.
Yeah.
So she was a very strong woman. Like people born in the 30s were very strong.
Yeah. They had to
And
be. They had to be to
yeah,
survive to be grandparents,
yeah.
right?
Well, which people used to be, you know how it is now. The young have become the old in many cases. You can see a lot of chronic diseases are now afflicting younger people, autoimmunity, even certain cancers. So they were a different breed of people. They were born in a world without plastics, without industrial pollution, all these pesticides. They were a feature of more modern life just before the Second World War
Well,
and
look, and
thereafter.
we've also just become so soft now. You know, life is so convenient. When you look at the older people, they were walking everywhere. They were doing real labor. They were
Yeah,
washing clothes. They were like, you know, every aspect of their day was like actual some type of physical exertion. Now, I mean,
exactly.
I could lay in my bed
Mm.
all day, all month, all year, never move and get everything just taken care of. Uber's going to come and bring my food. People will come and clean. I mean, it's really kind of
Yeah.
weird what's happened to modern world. And kids, like I have two kids, they don't
Mm.
even understand the concept of going out and working hard to do anything. You know, I mean, we dug some
Yeah.
holes when we were kids. You know, I went to my dad's construction sites and laid bricks. And I mean, kids, they just don't even understand that. You know,
Yeah, man. I've worked in construction for my dad as well. I've done everything in construction that you can. Well, most things. So,
right?
from laying bricks and painting houses and laying marble, even, which is kind of a bit of a craft,
That's
and
hard. Yeah, it's hard to lay
a
marble.
lot of stuff. So yeah, yeah. I think it's just nowadays you have to go out of your own way to instill these things into your kids. Because
Yeah.
back in the day, in my village in Bulgaria, I'd go out and I'd see my grandma, um, slaughter a chicken. I was like 5 years old. Seriously.
I can't say that happened in Los Angeles, but I think
So
I understand the concept. Yeah.
one of my earliest memories is my grandma, me going to the village to visit because we're living in the big city. They'd leave me there for the summer with her because I loved being there and playing with the animals and the other kids and whatever.
Well, not the
And
chickens. You don't have so much fun with the chickens, is my guess.
listen, she takes you out. She's like, come with me. We're going to get a chicken. What does that even mean to a kid? Okay, I'm just following grandma. Dude, without batting an eye that I'm looking, she just takes one of whichever one she picked, puts her puts her foot on its head, and with a kitchen knife cuts its head off. Yeah, no problem. And you know what?
Bulgaria, baby, Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, baby. And listen to this now. They in the new year they got me. Apparently, they got me a lamb, tiny little lamb.
Yeah.
It was my pet. It was cute. It
I
was
don't like where this
gorgeous.
story is going, Christian. I can
Listen to
tell you.
this now.
Go ahead.
May 4th is Saint George's Day, and you have to you know, slaughter a lamb in the name of the saints for good health, blah, 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 good season. So they fucking kill. Sorry, I don't know if I can
You can
swear.
swear. It's
They,
okay. I've heard
they
the word.
killed my lamb that had a name. And then we ate it. So all my
Oh my
sister,
God.
my cousins, the kids, they're all because they're all girls. They're crying, crying, crying. I was crying, and my parents, my because there was everybody's gathered, and they're like, it's good for you. Don't worry. This is part of
Not so
life.
good for the
Blah
lamb.
blah. Well, yeah, but you know what? This is part of life, bro. This because what you grew and raised, what you grew and raised is what you ate. Otherwise, you went without. So that's life. That's survival. And this is what kids nowadays, and not even kids, but adults my age, people in their 40s, don't understand is the convenience of going to the store and getting Beyond Burger or avocados that were grown
Yeah.
4,000 miles away. These things didn't exist even for anybody's grandparents, 2-3 generations ago.
Yeah.
So I think people are so disconnected from what real food is, and then they're like, "Oh, but I don't want my dietary choices to cause the suffering of other animals." But check this out: in nature, a lion will drag down a gazelle or whatever animal,
Right.
and it will eat its innards while it's still alive
Mm.
and tortures pain. So nature, we have to get over this fairy tale BS that Disney's programmed us with. Nature, it's a little bit rough. So the
It's a lot
reality is a
rough.
little,
It's a lot rough.
yeah, yeah,
I've
it's a
watched
little bit
National Geographic
dirty.
Channel.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little bit, the real world is a bit dirty. You get out there, you get your hands dirty a little bit in terms of growing the food and whatever else, processing the animals. So that's how we were living for a very long time. And it's just in the last couple of generations that this has been taken out of our hands. But what has that done is disconnected us from how we were surviving and thriving for millennia.
Yeah, no, and I think we kind of touched on it earlier, just like what's happening with modern society. I mean, and
Yeah.
I'm sure if we're talking about living longer in your book, we're going to get into food. It's going to be a big portion of it. But what's happening with our food supply is shocking. I mean, even from when I was a kid, I mean, when I grew up, we ate pretty much normal, regular food, vegetables and meat and fruits, and the ultra processing that's happening now with our food. I mean, it's destroying us. I mean, it's destroying human beings.
Yeah.
And all the chemicals are being pumped in and all the convenience that we have to have. And also now we have these mega farms and the way they're raising animals to fatten them up, artificially. I mean, it's kind of scary when you watch some of these documentaries and you realize what really is going in our food. And that's why we're seeing the obesity, and that's why we're seeing the disease, and that's why we're seeing people, suffering to such a great extent these days. And I'm sure you're about to get into it if we're talking about how we live longer.
Bro, I have 2 podcasts.
Do you? What
Yeah.
are their names?
Connecting Minds and Children's Health Podcast. So when I'm trying to do so many projects, you have to go down the path of least resistance.
Right.
And some people have criticized me, you don't even prepare. When your guest comes on your podcast, you don't even prepare.
By the way,
I'm like,
I don't
screw
either.
you, bro.
I just show
Screw
up
you,
and I
bro.
start talking.
That's how you learn to be a conversationalist, though.
Exactly. That's a good segue. So let's segue into what you do. So you've recently
Yeah.
written a book.
Yeah, this
Let's
is my
see it
second
again.
book.
Let's see it again. I know you like to show it.
How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1.
Okay. And what drove you said earlier that you watched your grandparents kind of suffer through their final years. I'm sure they gave you some
Yeah.
impetus. But did you then go and do some education, some training on kind of
Yeah.
geriatrics?
I'll be perfectly honest. What doctors learn is not designed to create optimally healthy, thriving human beings. It's all designed to teach doctors about disease, to tell them it's mostly genetic or idiopathic or functional in those cases where they can't diagnose it, and then to mask or suppress its symptoms, the symptoms of disease, with synthesized chemicals by chemical producing companies. And those chemical producing companies, if you look into the history of it, who started the medical education uh, complex, those people have their fingers in many pies, from petroleum to the
Well, the
banking.
more drugs they can
and
sell, the more money everybody makes, right? I mean, that's what
and
our
if
industry is.
exactly, if you do something like prevent a disease or cure a disease, you're not gonna be in business for a very long time.
You're
So that's
costing
very,
money. You're costing money.
very bad business model.
Where
So
did you
yeah,
do your education where you learned about all these things?
so I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've done a number of other courses. So I've studied breathing with one of the foremost breathing experts in the world. I've studied nutritional biochemistry. I've studied with Paul Chek's organization and a few others. I've done various courses in genetics, but my main, what I kind of quote unquote advertise myself as, is a health author and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And the reason that's important is because even doctors have taken this course they because they're not being taught how to build health in a person, how to teach a person to become healthy as opposed to just mask their symptoms. So doctors want to learn how to use functional lab testing too.
I was going to say, it must have taken a lot of Red Bull and weed for you to get through all that.
Oh, I gave that stuff up a long
Okay.
time ago.
Okay, good enough. Just want to
I've
confirm.
turned over a new leaf.
Good.
But I think it's important to share. Honestly, you don't want to go to somebody that doesn't have any empathy, right? So if you go to someone that's always been perfectly healthy, I struggle to think how they would actually empathize with you, right? So there's a lot of specialists in their field that suffer from the have suffered from the very issue that they help people with. So gut experts, autoimmunity experts that have completely reversed their issue. Hypothyroidism experts that have had metabolic issues related to thyroid disorder. So these people, having been through the bad parts, then when a client or a patient, if they're a doctor, when the client comes to them, they can put themselves in their shoes and they can say, well, why don't you try this? So they can give them ideas. So for example, someone comes to me, let's say, that is struggling with let's say sleep problems. I've had a lot of sleep problems over my 37 years I've been alive, and I know so much about resolving sleep problems because I've tried all of these things on myself and my wife because she had horrendous insomnia after our daughter was born. So I've had clients where literally one session is all it took to resolve their sleep problems comprehensively and permanently. I had one client, her daughter was 9 years old. I gave them a whole big old protocol, like try this, do this to the room, stop associating the bed with anything but sleep. So she will read on her couch or on the floor, put a little blankie, whatever. The red light at night, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Putting dinner closer to bedtime and so on. But the first thing on that whole list of things in that protocol, based on their specific situation, was give her a tablespoon or two of honey before bed. And that first thing was enough because I knew based on my lifestyle analysis what time was dinner time, what exactly when was it trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, and so on, right? Or waking up too early and not being able to fall asleep. So I knew what way to put the things, and the first thing on the list, boom,
So let
sorted
me
out
ask you,
the
and
issue.
I actually run into people like you all the time who have, holistic types of medicine and do things from a non-Western point of view.
Yeah.
Look, and us in the West, and you're kind of in a Western country now, we're taught to go to the doctor and take medicines and do kind of the format of healing that we've learned over the last 40, 50, 60 years. When you go to people and say, hey, look, I can solve your insomnia by giving your kid a spoonful of honey, what's the reaction? I mean, do people immediately say, that makes sense, let me try it? Or are they more resistant? Like, how do people respond to your guidelines?
Yeah, so well, this is why I write books and I have a podcast because people generally are apprehensive, as you should be, right? They've been taught to trust the doctors, and look where that's taken us in terms of
Yeah.
disease rates and
Yeah.
and pharmaceutical company profits. But uh, a lot of people are now receptive, so the people that come to me are obviously receptive to the whole thing. But yeah, someone off the street, like a random person, they would have to talk to me to understand that I'm not some. There's a lot of obviously bullshitters and charlatans and people that think they know stuff but they don't actually know stuff. So I go to a lady for Pilates. So she's a Pilates instructor, and I I went to her for a month, once a week, 4 sessions, one session every week. So for
Yep.
4 weeks. At the end of that 4 weeks, several herself and several members of her family became my clients. So I was advising herself, her husband, her daughter, one of her granddaughters, and I've also helped. I think her nephew or something like that. Right. So she knew within 4 hours of meeting me to total time us chatting in between instructing me to do Pilates. She knew, oh my God, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Right.
Signed up, boom.
Because I would
Um,
imagine that's the hardest part of your practice is convincing
yeah,
people that you know what you're talking about. You're not just making shit up. That
exactly.
don't have a new snake oil.
Exactly. So I left some flyers in her office, and one of the ladies that picked it up, she looked at it and was talking about longevity and so on. It's like she's tried so many things. She said so many health issues, and the woman said to my instructor, "How do I know he's just not another snake oil salesman?"
Yeah.
And she told her, "Just talk to him. you will understand. And this is why I offer a free intro call to people so they can talk to me. No hassles, no strings attached. Free. I say 15 minutes on the website, but usually we do 20, 30 minutes. It's not a big issue. I always keep like a half hour open so we
Yeah.
can chat with people.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into some of the mechanics of how we actually live longer. What are
Yeah.
the large guidelines you have in the book?
So I have a little graphic that I created myself, so it's not perfect, but you have to reduce or eliminate or ameliorate what I call the primary drivers of aging and dysfunction. And these are very simply stress, which is a very broad
Yeah.
category of things that includes psychological and physiological stress. Now, physiological stressors, I subdivide into inflammation and oxidative stress. These are what I call archetypal stressors because a lot of things cause them in the body and out from outside of from the environment, and they cause a lot of dysfunction.
Right.
Right. So inflammation and oxidative stress are implicated in any disease you can think of, from cancer to depression to autism to literally anything you can think of.
But
Right.
look, when you
So
talk about stress and inflammation, you're talking about everything, right? I mean, to say to eliminate stress, because it could come from food, it could come from your psychological
no,
makeup, your
I'm not saying to eliminate stress. I said these are the factors, and we want to ideally eliminate them. If we can't, we want to mitigate, minimize, or ameliorate them. And most of these things, you will. It's a spec. See, these things are a spectrum. So you just want to stay on this side. Let's say where it's low,
got it.
stress is low, inflammation is low, oxidative stress is low. And in terms of, so you have a stress response in the body that the fight or flight nervous system. So that is actually necessary for survival. But the trick is to only use it when you need it. So you want to run for the bus? Okay, great. You want to run away from a bear? Great. So in the meantime, though, during the rest of the day, you want to keep the fight or flight nervous system inactive to a great extent. And here is the thing that I teach people is ostensibly healthy practices in the current zeitgeist are activating the fight or flight nervous system, the stress response, or what I call stress mode. And these include, wait for it, intermittent fasting, extreme like exercise. I'm not talking just exercise, I'm talking like endurance exercise, like 2 hours, marathon running. Skipping meals and intermittent fasting is the same category. Low carb diets, ketogenic diets, so ice baths, Wim Hof breathing. A lot of these things activate the sympathetic nervous system, also known as the fight or flight nervous system, and that puts us in the stress response. And what does that mean? It means stress hormones go up. And why is that bad? Because stress hormones, the way they facilitate the stress response is by breaking down your body, literally. Bone, muscle, joints, skin, anything can be broken down by cortisol, including parts of the brain.
Right. And that was actually the point I was getting at earlier, is that when you initially said we want to try to eliminate or ameliorate stress, I mean, I started thinking, well, that's my whole life. Like, that's everything I do, from eating to working to playing to running around. I mean, that's the world that we live in these days, is creating stress. It's a 24/7 news cycle now.
How is eating a stress for you, though?
Well, it depends on what type of food you're eating, right? If you're eating highly processed foods, or if you're eating incorrectly, or if you're eating too much
Yeah,
or too little, right? I mean, like you said, I mean, all these things can cause stress. I mean, living
yeah,
your life in a way that's, appropriate for our systems that have developed over the last 5,000, 100,000 years. I mean,
yeah,
the modern world that we live in and what we're subjected to in terms of food and medicine and the environment, it's like you said, in the last couple generations, it's shifted dramatically from what it was for all time. And if you
yeah.
look at the general state of people in the world today, you can tell. And that's what, I mean, that's what your book is all about, right? It's kind of, I imagine, reverting back to a more healthy, organic lifestyle.
So the yes, with the distinction that we cannot only rely on what worked well for our ancestors, because the modern world has a lot of modern challenges, which we already touched on, like EMFs or various radiation frequencies. pesticides, herbicides, plastics. So my approach is, where appropriate, we use the ancestral wisdom and practices like organic food and um, uh, correct circadian timing. So that's why at as soon as this call is done, all of these lights go off, and I'm putting on my blue blocking, proper blue. So these are
Right.
partially blue blocking. I'm putting on the red lens blue blockers, so it will imitate night as best as possible, so I can continue to function. Feed my daughter, take my dog for a walk. So, but I'm trying to imitate those aspects that are healthy from the ancestral point of view, but I'm not going to be naive and say I'm not going to supplement my diet because it's not natural. I'm supplementing my diet as well as eating organic and really healthily and clean, because a lot of things have been stripped out of the food supply. So a lot of nutrients, minerals mostly, have been stripped out of our soils, for one. So I supplement with various things. And we could go on and on and on.
Yeah, let's
But
go on a little further. So we talked about ameliorating and reducing stress in your life. What else do we do to actually live longer?
so in this volume one, the biggest one of so there's several big themes. So the first big theme I tackle after explaining all the stress, inflammation, oxidative stress, and how these things are killing us, and rip on the pharma industry and sick care for a little bit. The
You should.
next thing that's incredibly important is to protect ourselves from polyunsaturated fats. So everybody knows, well, a lot of people know that seed oils are bad. Most people, all they've done is they've stopped buying seed oils to cook with at home. They continue to be exposed to them by eating out, by eating processed food, by eating takeout, eating at a whole food salad bar. Oh yeah, that's got canola oil. All those salads and things, they have a seed oil in them. So this is an incredibly important aspect of it, probably number one on the list. And I explain why. I talk about the links to cancer, to heart disease. Just think again, any disease, seed oils, or rather, not necessarily the seed oils, but the fact that you have your seed oil, so you have various fatty acids in it, omega 6s, right? One of them, it's the most abundant one, is called linoleic acid. And that one is a precursor to literal inflammatory mediators in the body. So by eating more of these, being exposed to more of them, your whole body, you have a higher inflammatory burden. And the process of getting these things out of your body is a long one. You have to be really judicious with your food intake, because it can take several years for a fatty acid that's incorporated into like a brain cell or a tissue in the skin, whatever else, epithelial tissues. It can take years for that to be kind of recycled. So they have a half life of 2 years. That's
So Christian, you're talking about things that are like, I mean, it's really hard. It's hard to remove yourself from all of these chemicals and all the things that are out there in the world. I mean, to not go out to eat, or to, learn to stay
I'm
away
not saying
from.
don't go out to eat. I give you strategies when you go out to eat, how to avoid these things, right?
Okay.
And I'm giving you strategies how to protect yourself from them. So vitamin E being the biggest one, right? That really helps
Right. So,
for
and
us.
my question was going to be like, when you're dealing with your clients, tell me about some of the success stories. Tell me about some of the people who are able to modify just their regular lifestyles based on the guidelines you're giving them, and have seen really dramatic differences in their lives.
This is why I offer people 3, 6, and 12 months health consulting services. So I have people that are already doing things well in terms of diet mainly, and lifestyle, and cleaning up from toxic products and so on, but they still have health problems. So those folks, 3 to 6 months is kind of the age, or the health package that I recommend. But folks, especially older folks with ingrained habits, I recommend going 6 to 12 months, so we can go through the process together. We meet every month, and you tell me, you track your diet, and you tell me, your diet tells me you're eating peanut oil, you're eating soybean oil, you're eating Wendy's, whatever. I can then help you make better choices. So it's a process. Some people, it can take a whole year to get to the place where they've removed these things out of the diet, right? So I've had it's hard to think of one specific success story, but I had one, because I'm trying to beef up my website at the moment. I had one lady
Yeah.
in Australia.
Case
She
studies
sent
are
me a
always good.
she sent me a testimonial today, and she said she was in tears as she was writing it. And she said, I mean every word of it. So let me see if I had it here on the website somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Take your time.
So she said, she sent it to me today. I came across Christian when he was a guest on a podcast I was listening to. I've been working with him for nearly 10 months. When I started working with Christian, I felt so hopeless. I had so many symptoms for 10 plus years. I really had no idea of what was going on. I just knew I wasn't well. The term holistic gets thrown around too often. However, Christian truly works this way. Every area of my life has improved, including my sleep, digestion, skin, energy, and periods. Christian has helped me through functional testing and supplementation. However, the greatest thing I have taken away is simple, everyday skills to manage my own health through diet, supplements, and lifestyle. Christian has taught me how to manage my own health and to be self-sufficient. Now, this lady, almost every single meal she ate when we started working together, she would get pain, gas, bloating. She wouldn't sleep well. Her periods were excruciating. Fatigue. I could see her cheekbones. She was really like low in weight. I could see her cheekbones, her almost sunken face. Now she glows. Like when the last time I saw her was maybe 3 4 weeks ago. I saw her face. And I don't know, was it the lighting in the room? But she's glowing now. She wants to get pregnant soon, and
She
this is
might have gotten a
almost
better.
like
She might have gotten a better webcam. It's possible.
yeah, that's why I said I'm not saying it was magic. Some magic happened, but so she went from pain, gas, bloating, all that stuff, bro. I told her all of these things you're eating. Just let's stop for 1 or 2 weeks if you can. Just eat steak, butter, and white rice, organic, all organic. All of those symptoms completely went away. So I told her it's evident some vegetables or beans or grains or seeds were causing that stuff. Let's stay on this and start adding benign foods. And we started working on the gut. We started working on supplementation, improving sleep, improving hormonal balance. Mind you, without any lab tests. So usually I like to run lab tests, but for her it was in Australia, a lot of logistics and extra expense. So I said, look, we play this by ear, and it took a little bit longer in terms of the gut cleansing stuff to get it all right. Around Christmas, she sent me a picture. It was a folded worm, but it was some like very long, probably tapeworm. She had on a piece of toilet paper.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
folded up, but
Oh,
these are nasty
put that on
long.
your website. That'll
Yeah,
bring people in.
I told her I might put this on my website. So it's just an amazing process, and I sometimes not that I tear up, but I definitely like I get you know guys in our feelings. We can't
Yeah,
really talk about it.
it's
I
not
get,
very easy.
bros, the feeling you get to help someone like this. I doubt most doctors have even experienced that once in their careers if they're just doling out chemicals,
Yeah.
man.
Well, look, I mean, I completely believe in what you do, and I think it's great. And I think understanding what we're putting in our body and, really being able to take care of the way you eat and the way you live your life is important. And so many people just don't understand it anymore, because
Yeah,
we are just bombarded with messages from TV and advertising, and the very convenient way we live our life now has all these deleterious effects that people have kind of forgotten about. So I think it's great what you're doing. I do have to say that, like, a lot of times when I talk to guys like you, it's like it's hard for people to really understand how much of their life is affected by all these things. And so they go in asking for like a quick fix. I want a quick fix. I want to take this pill or do that other thing,
yeah,
which is the way our Western brains think of medicine. And to deal with a guy like you who says, no, let's look at the entire ecosystem of your life. Let's talk
yeah,
about what you're eating and where you're going and what you're doing and how you're sleeping and how you poop and and all these other
yeah,
things.
yeah.
And you can completely transform your entire life in a matter of months, like you've
Absolutely,
done. I think it's great.
absolutely.
I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. And I find that the hardest people to convince is usually men
Well, we're
for
idiots.
whatever reason.
We can't help ourselves.
Well,
That's from the
we are like
5,000 years of development.
yeah, my lifestyle in my 20s proves men are idiots
Mm.
because a lot of guys continue that. Well, not to the crazy extent I used to do, but guys continue, and we really seem to own. This is again kind of our indoctrination into the culture. Is we are programmed to wait for something to go wrong, and then we seek only to suppress the symptom.
Yeah.
And look, think about how we deal with our cars, man. Guys are out there literally investing more and taking better care of a machine
Yeah.
that gets them from A to B than their own bodies. Like, guys are diagnostic checks and, oh, let me check my oil levels. When was the last time you checked your hormones?
Yeah, no, it's so
Bro,
true. It's so true.
when was the guys are putting spoilers and rims and whatever that costs hundreds and thousands of bucks. And I
And then
remember,
they're drinking Red Bull and smoking weed. They're all fucked up.
yeah,
Chris,
absolute
I could sit here and talk
jabronis.
to you for hours, man. I really appreciate all
Yeah.
the education you have, and it's a very interesting point of view. And I think it's super important for people to understand. But we all have our timing constraints. So how do people get in touch with you?
My website is just my name.com, so christianyordanov.com. Like I said, I offer free intro calls, so anyone that is interested to see how we can work together, if they need any help, they can check it out there. christianyordanov.com. The book is on Amazon. All the links are on my website. It's all there, to my podcasts, to my social media, whatever else. I'm
And say
not
what the
big on
names of your
social media.
podcasts again are.
So Connecting Minds is one where I interview some really awesome people, and I do solo health talk and occasional not political, but commentary on world craziness. And the other one is Children's Health Podcast. That's all about, it used to be all about autism. Now it's a bit more broad on children's health
Yeah.
and autism.
And I had planned on talking about autism on this podcast too. We just ran a little bit over time. But look, I think I'd love to have you back. And I'd love to talk some of the other stuff you're doing.
I'd love to be back, man. You gotta, it's like we're in a cafe or a bar shooting the shit.
That's what this podcast is. I just show up and start talking to people. It's awesome. And I really enjoyed talking to you today. I think what you're doing is fantastic. And we definitely like to have you on again. So anyway, this has been Dan and Dante, another episode of Middle Age Mess. Please like us, subscribe to us, send us an email, tell me how much you love me or Christian, either one. It works both ways. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.